Word. All right, so this is PowerPoint 13, and it is about the reproductive system. And reproductive system, of course, it is a continuation of human species. We will be talking about female and male reproductive system. And the most important thing is what is the function of each of the organs of this system. So we will be talking about the female reproductive system, including the organs itself, and generally speaking, what is the function of female as compared to the male reproductive system. Obviously, number one is producing gametes, and gametes is a generic word that's not specific. It means six cell, like a sperm or an oocyte or ova. So you're not being specific now. Um, you can be specific and say the gamete in females is ova. The gamete in male is sperm. But when you say just gamete, gamete is coming from the Greek to marry, meaning you produce it to produce offsprings. This is what the origin of the gametes. And this is something that's you need to remember. Gametes in general is ova in females and sperm in males. This is one of the functions. The second function in both of them is producing hormones. In males, it is one type of hormone, which is androgen, most important, testosterone. For females, it's estrogen, which is equivalent to testosterone, but there is an additional one because females, they have a uterus and they should be able to conceive and get pregnant and all that. So there is an additional hormone which is called progesterone or progestin. Progestin, as usual, we're going to cut it into two pieces. Progestin means pro-gestation. Gestation is pregnancy. Pro is promoting. So progestin is to promote gestation, which is pregnancy. And there is no equivalent to that in males. So these are the basic two functions. And the third one is because the uterus. The uterus is in females only, as we know. So this is an additional one, which is to get pregnant and nourish the fetus until it is and give born and all that stuff. So this is another difference between male and female reproductive system. When sexual intercourse occur, there will be fertility, sperm versus ova. Ova is not the most accurate word. It's called oocyte. Ova is more like general language, not very specific, but we will discuss the details. So the next part is gonads. Same thing. I told you gametes is a generic word, a common word for six cells. So gametes can be male gametes, female gametes. Female gametes, ova or oocyte, male gametes is a sperm. Same thing here. When we say gonads, you're not being specific. We're talking about the primary reproductive organ. Primary reproductive organ, we call it gonads. What is the male primary reproductive organ versus female primary reproductive organ, which is the gonad? In males, it is testes, and females, it's the ovaries. So both testes and ovaries are called gonads. So just like gametes, a general word, and we're not being specific so far. When I say gametes, I'm not being specific. Can be you have to ask me male or female. If I'm saying gonads, yes, I'm not specific now. Are you talking about male or female gonad, which is male or female primary reproductive organ? Because there are secondary reproductive organs, and this is something that you need to understand. So when I ask you male gonads, testes, female gonads, ovaries, which those two are the ones that are going to produce what we already talked about, which is gametes and hormones. Okay, like males producing sperm and testosterone, females oocyte or ova plus estrogen and progesterone or progestin. Why males and females? Like we know, uh, gametes, sex cells, it's for reproduction, basically. So it is for fertilization and pregnancy and all that stuff. But how about the hormones? The hormones are serving two functions that we need to know. Number one, the primary function is to prepare the reproductive system for pregnancy and for fertilization and all that. But there is an additional function, which is femininity versus uh, androgenity or uh, female secondary sexual characteristics versus male secondary sexual characteristics. And just to take it easy, when we say primary organs, we're talking about gonads. When we say secondary organs, we're talking about the other organs. When we say secondary sexual characteristics or sex characteristics, what are the secondary sex characteristics? These are the characteristics or the changes that happen in the body at adolescence, at puberty, I mean, and you name it. Of course, you can easily tell what's the difference. Here is a boy, and when he at puberty, you see what happened. He changed. His body become bigger, more muscles, more bones. Um, Maturity of his organs, the distribution of the muscles is different. The hair, which is extremely important, the hair appear in different spots, most importantly around the genitalia and the armpits and so on. In females, of course, we know how a little girl, when it come to puberty and she become a female or after puberty, so femininity start to show up, including all what we know, the different distribution of the fat in different spots, breast become bigger, same thing as the hair also grow in different spots, including around genitalia and the armpits and the other differences. So you name it, whatever you know that happened during puberty, we call those secondary secondary sex characteristics or secondary sexual characteristics. And this is something important to know. And I'm pointing out to the most important, the core of the chapter: gonads, gametes, primary organs, secondary sexual characteristics, and so on. So when we start with the female reproductive system, I just give you a general idea. And let's go a little bit into the different components. Let's always start with the ovaries, since these are the primary reproductive organ in females. Beside the ovaries, and I already mentioned, ovaries is to produce gametes. It's called gonad. It's the female gonad. It's a female primary sex organ, reproductive organ. Plus, it produce what? Produce oocyte or ova, plus the two hormones that I mentioned. When the female produced the ova, it will be picked up by this part. It's called the fimbriae. Don't just look like this, like finger-like projection. That's going to suck it in, and it go to this tube, and this tube is called oviduct or fallopian tube. Why did you call it oviduct? Because it's a duct that take the ova from the ovary. So the name is coming either from the ova that's traveling through it or because it's connected to the ovary. In all cases, it's called oviduct or fallopian tube. And this will take it to the uterus right here. And obviously, the uterus is where the fertilized egg is going to go, and it's going to grow into embryo and fetus and so on. So it's basically, this is what's going to house the fertilized egg to grow and become embryo and fetus and so on. So it's to nourish and to keep the growing baby inside, or whatever, embryo versus fetus and so on. This is for the uterus. This part of the uterus, which is the neck of the uterus, called cervix. Cervix translation, neck, the neck of the uterus. What's the function? It is the lower part of the uterus through which the baby or the fetus will be born. He had to go through the cervix. Cervix has to be dilated in order to pass through it. And then the baby will go through the vagina until it's born out. So this is the function out. Is that the only function? No, it's not the only function. Also, during menstruation, the monthly period, blood leave through the cervix, through the vagina to outside. Also, we know sexual intercourse and the semen, the sperms go into the vagina, from which it go into the cervix to the uterus, and it will travel actually in the oviduct, also known as fallopian tube. And most of the time, if there is conception or fertilization that's going to occur, it's always happen here in the oviduct, or most of the time, it happen here in the oviduct. Like the ova is moving like this, slowly, 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 and there is sexual intercourse. So the sperms are coming from the vagina, to the cervix, to the uterus, and actually it leave some of them, of course. A lot of them are going to die as you go, but the very strong one will continue, continue, continue until they exit out of the uterus and go to the oviduct. And this is the most common location for conception right here, for fertilization, somewhere along the oviduct. Vagina, I mentioned it, in and out. In, sexual intercourse, semen, sperm; out, the monthly period and the baby birth. In front or anterior to the uterus, there is the bladder. Urinary bladder is to store the urine. And behind it, behind the uterus, there is the rectum to store feces. So in front of it and behind it. In front of it, urinary bladder, and behind it is the rectum. Storage of urine, storage of feces. But there is something that's important here, which is the bladder, when it stores the urine will ultimately, during urination, it's going to leave through the urethra. And the urethra has its own openings, as you see here. This is the opening of the vagina, and this is the opening of the urethra. So these are two separate canals. Unlike in males, both of them run in the same urethra. The semen leave through the male urethra, the urine leave through the male urethra. So this is a very important difference between males, and there are a lot of differences, but I will talk about it as we go. The biological function of the female reproductive system is to nurture the developing offspring, meaning embryo and baby, and then for conception. Ovaries and testes are both called, this is important and I mentioned it, ovaries and testes are called gonads.
Gonads.
Yes, and these are primary or secondary reproductive organs. Gonads. Primary or secondary?
Primary.
Primary. Yes, primary. And what are the two hormones for females?
Estrogen and I can't remember the other one.
Progesterone.
Progesterone.
Yes, estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen and progesterone, this is in females. Estrogen and progesterone, it will guide the reproduction, but it's responsible for developing of what sexual characteristics or sex characteristics? Primary or secondary? It is the secondary sexual characteristics which occur during puberty. Because what are the primary sex characteristics? It's just the primary organs. So we're born with it. There is no need for these hormones that continue to be secreted in order to help the primary, because females have the ovaries even when they were embryo and fetus. They already have it. but what developed later is secondary sexual characteristics.
Okay.
All right, so next is how females produce the ova, but the ova is more known as OO. OO. So oogenesis is two parts. OO means ova or ovum. Genesis, generation. Oogenesis, generation of the ova or the eggs. And we always use that. Always use the medical terminology, prefixes and suffixes. Because you will be using OO all the time, you'll be using Genesis all the time. So if we learn it now, it gets easier and easier. So what happened here is we start with something called primary oocyte, which is immature. It will do meiosis, and we talked about meiosis before, and I told you that genetics part or this part, the cell cycle, mitosis and meiosis is important, very important. So it will go into meiosis. And if you still remember when we talked about meiosis before, there is meiosis 1 and there is meiosis 2. But what happened here in this part specifically, that we go into meiosis until you get into prophase 1. This is for females, for the cell, for the ova, or the oocyte, primary oocyte. They go to prophase 1, and that's it when they are born. So this is important. Well, in order to produce the eggs, you have to do both of them. I understand that, but I'm saying at birth, it is stuck in prophase 1, and then at puberty, it's going to resume later on and continue the rest of the stages. But this is something important to remember, that at birth, the meiosis stop at prophase 1. Is it going to continue? Yes, after puberty. And you end up they end up producing haploid. Haploid, if you still remember, haplo means half, apple, which is 23 chromosomes in the oocyte. Because the sperm will also have 23. When they combine, it's 46, which is a full number, which is called diploid, double. So later on, at puberty, there will be secondary oocyte, and these are the eggs. These are the ones that are going to leave. So we're being more specific here. Let me go back just to show you something. Remember when we talked about this, I told you the ova will leave and go here. To be more specific, it's not the ova. It is the secondary oocyte. First of all, it's primary oocyte and stuck at prophase 1. Now it's puberty. Yes, secondary oocyte, to be specific. We just say ova or egg just to make it easy. But to be more specific, it's not just ova. Which one? Which stage? Like when you say male, what do you mean by male? Are you talking about male child or adolescent or old man, or what do you mean? So when we say ova, you're just generalizing. But to be more specific, it is the secondary oocytes that leave the ovaries, be picked up by the fimbriae of the fallopian tube or oviduct, and moving toward the uterus, just to be more specific. So it is secondary oocyte, the one that's released. Secondary oocyte. And these are the ones that we call it the actual eggs that leave the ovary and go to the fallopian tube for a possible sperm coming from the other side. Possible. There is one thing that's important, and I talked about it before in a previous chapter, that unlike males, you start with 1 sperm, you make 2, and those 2 become 4. So you start with 1, you end up having 4, while in females, you start with one, you end up having one. And the other three are called polar bodies. Polar bodies are going to just be discarded and they will be disintegrate and they will be lost. So when we say you start with one and you end up having one, is that accurate? It's not very accurate. You end up having four, but three of them are called polar bodies. And you need to remember that. One of them only is the actual secondary oocyte, the one that can make conception, that can be fertilized, the one that's taking most of the cytoplasm, the big one. But the other three are called just polar bodies, useless. We will get rid of it. All of that so far, we are in meiosis 1. So this oocyte is stopped at meiosis 1. It doesn't finish. And it can stay like that forever at primary oocyte. I'm sorry, at primary meiosis. Unlike males. Males, primary, I mean meiosis 1 and meiosis 2. You go onto the steps, into the steps twice, if you still remember. Here, you go into the steps twice, but you go into the meiosis 1 first. And then at the end of the meiosis 1, you end up having the secondary oocyte that stop here. It does not continue into the next. The next will happen only if the egg is fertilized. Meiosis 2 only occur, which is the remaining part of making this a mature ova. It is meiosis 2. When meiosis 2 happen, only if there is a sperm that does actual fertilization. So do you mean that all females can stay their entire life not having a single mature egg that's finished meiosis 2 and it's fully mature? Yes. If there is no sperm, there is no meiosis 2, there is no fully mature egg. It becomes fully mature only after fertilization. It will do the second part. Look at this picture right here. This is the primary oocyte. We talked about this before, but refresh our information. This is the primary oocyte. And meiosis 1 start here. You do the first mitotic division, and you stop at prophase 1. And then you do not continue until puberty. At puberty, now you will have the secondary oocyte. So one give you two, but one of them is the first polar body. It's useless. Yes, this contains 23 and this contains 23. Yes, but this one is useless. We will get rid of it. It will be degenerated. But the other one is the one that will continue. So here it is. This is secondary oocyte. Can this secondary oocyte stay like that forever? Yes, it can. That's it. You can stop here. Only if a sperm come and fertilize it, you are going to do the second mitotic division and you will get another 2 out of this secondary oocyte. But one of them is the actual zygote, the fertilized egg, and the other one is the other polar body. So at the end, you end up having one zygote and the others are polar bodies that will be disintegrated. You start with one, you end up having one fully mature egg, which is a zygote. The zygote is the fertilized egg. Remember this? Zygote is fertilized egg. The zygote will grow and become embryo, and then it will become fetus, and then it will grow around 9 months. It will be born. So here are the polar bodies. And all what I want you to know is useless, will degenerate. Layers of the uterus is an important thing to know. So if you look at this picture right here, endometrium is the innermost lining, and this is the one to which the zygote, which is a fertilized egg, is going to attach and become embryo and become fetus. When it attach, it will make the placenta. So this is the importance of the endometrium. If a female have an issue with the endometrium, she will never get pregnant because the attachment of the zygote is to the endometrium. Can females like a female that have a bad endometrium for whatever reason get fertilized and get a zygote but never get a baby? Yes, because simply here is the secondary oocyte right here. The fimbriae are going to take it into the infundibulum, which is part of the fallopian tube or the oviduct, and it's moving like this. Let's say there is a sexual intercourse into the vagina, semen, sperms, part of it die, and part of it continue, cervix, uterus, and it leaves and go here. While the secondary oocyte come, fertilization occur. When fertilization occur, now we have a fertilized egg, which is mature egg, which is zygote. And then the zygote will move, grow, 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 until it reach here and attach to the endometrium. If the endometrium is bad, it will go here. The endometrium is bad, it will be discarded. It will be lost. They call it miscarriage, they call it failed pregnancy, whatever the name is. And this endometrium is the most important part, even though endometrium followed by myometrium, followed by perimetrium outside. And this sequence is important. And let me tell you this, rule of the thumb. Usually, when you have what they call it, an organ that have a cavity, uh, and the cavity is 3 layers, always know that it's endo, myo, peri. Endo, myo, peri. Endo, inside. Myo, muscles, which is the middle layer. Peri, translation, around, which is outside. Endo, myo, peri. Endo, myo, peri. Is it only here? No. It's in different organs. So endo, myo, peri. Endo, end, the innermost. Myo, muscle, middle, MM. Myo, muscles, middle layer. Remember this. The myometrium, myo is translated as muscles. Middle, MMM, to remember it. Perimetrium, which is this. Translation, around. So it has to be outside. What's the importance from the endometrium? I told you. This is the endometrium that's going to become thicker, preparing for a zygote to attach to it. And it's going to grow, making placenta connecting the endometrium to the embryo, which will become fetus. 9 months, it will be born. The muscles are to contract and push out the baby. And we will talk about this. One more thing here, you don't have like, this is a lot of details. The only thing that I want you to know here is back to this one. This is the ovary, and it contains like follicles. These are called follicles, inside which you have the primary oocyte. It becomes secondary oocyte, and then the secondary oocyte is ovulated, meaning it leaves the follicle. Now, when it gets in, how does it move? This is the point that I want to add. How does it move? First thing is these finger-like projections are going to pick it up and push it into the infundibulum. Now what? How does it move? Well, number one, there will be contractions of the muscles here to push it in. There is also cilia. Cilia are like tiny projections that will sweep it, push, push, push. So these are different things that are going to help Uh, somebody having a question, or you're not muted? Just please mute yourself if you're not muted. So this is what happened here, that these cilia, look at this, looks like a sweeper or finger-like projections, tiny. They keep on pushing the secondary oocyte end. Now the menstrual cycle. What's a menstruation in the first place? Menstruation is this monthly period that happens in females in which basically, remember I told you the endometrium, the innermost layer of the uterus? This endometrium itself is two parts. Part of it is the one that will be sloughed off if there is no pregnancy. When it's sloughed off, there will be blood, there will be cells that are sloughed off, and together they leave, and we call that menstruation. The other layer, it doesn't leave because it will reform the layer that left. So there are two zones here. So this is what menstruation is. Part of the endometrium, not the whole thing. If the whole endometrium sheds off, sloughs off, that's it. This will lead to infertility. It never happened. What actually happened is part of it, zone of it, the functional zone is the one that becomes thicker, preparing for pregnancy. And if there is no pregnancy, it shrinks, sloughs, and leave with blood, menstruation. The other layer is the basal layer. It never leaves. So the menstrual cycle is from menstruation to menstruation. It's different from female to female, from girl to girl. It can be from 21 until 37 in adults, and 21 to 45 in teenagers. It's in the beginning, but later on, this is the normal. At 21 to 37, they usually, if you put the average, they usually say it's 28 as an average, 28. Does it has to be 28? Of course not. You will see some girls having it 25, 26, 28, 30. As long as it's within this number, it is fine. Every girl, every female is different. Now, two terms here that are basics you need to know. Look at this. Men, arche, and men, pause. Men is part of menstruation. Men, menstruation. Arche, start. Pause, stop. Start menstruation, stop menstruation. Menarche, menopause. You know, pause means stop. It's just like English, pause. So menarche versus menopause. Arche, pause. Arche, start. This is the very first menstrual cycle. This is where young girls, they started to grow somewhere between 10 and 16. It can be any of those. And they will have the very first menstrual cycle. And usually they are like scared and shocked. What is this blood coming and stuff like that? This is called the menarche. Later on, they will get used to it. But the very first one is called menarche. The last one is called menopause. It's somewhere between the age of 40 and 60. Every lady is different. Uh, the average is 50 something. And this is the last period, after which it completely stops. But just for your information, it should stop for a year to say it's menopause. Menopause. What do you mean? I mean, some ladies stop menstruating for 2, 3, 4 months, and then they get menstruation again. You can't say this is menopause. The last one, and count 12 months without a period. Now it's menopause. Now, reproductive cycle. What exactly happened in the uterus? Remember this endometrium, the innermost one? itself, it's two parts. Part of it, during menstruation, first of all, what happened is the endometrium, because of estrogen and progestin, the two hormones, become thicker and ready for as a zygote to attach to it. If there is no fertilization, which is most of the time, that's a normal. The hormones will drop, and then this is going to shrink, disintegrate, or sloughs off, and this is menstruation. And this phase can be somewhere between 1 to 5 days, 3 days in average. There are some unusual menstruation can like stay until like 7 days or 8 days or something. It can be, but this is the average. It's so menstruation, it can stay, let's say average 3 days, 3 days menstruation, blood leaving until it stopped. And then because you lost, the lady lost part of the endometrium that's sloughed off because it was preparing itself for conception. There is no conception. So now we don't need it anymore. To be sloughed off menstruation. After that, estrogen is going to rebuild it. We call it the proliferative phase. What you mean rebuild it means you make it again and it becomes thicker again. And this is take the first half of the cycle. Let's say they said day 14, assuming that we're talking about the average here, which is 28 days. So like in the middle. So the first half is the endometrium is rebuilding, proliferating, rebuilding. The first 14 days or the first half. What mark the half, day 14, is ovulation. What's ovulation? The release of the secondary oocyte from the ovary will be picked up by the fimbriae, infundibulum, oviduct, what I talked about before. So this kicking off of the secondary oocyte out of uh, what is it called? The follicle, out of the follicle, it was inside a follicle. Once it's kicked out, released, this is called ovulation around day 14. And then we don't know what's going to happen. Maybe we have to be prepared. So maybe this secondary oocyte that was released out of the follicle and be picked up and go into the fallopian tube or oviduct for a chance that there is the sperm coming from the other side. So we have to be fully ready. Or okay, the endometrium is already thick. No, that's not enough. Progesterone, the other hormone, will make it even better in the other 14 days after the ovulation, meaning it will become more secretions to prepare to, so that if the zygote come, it will find it thick and it will find secretions for moisturizing, and it will contain nutritions. Um, of course, you're not going to see something like that. That's too much, possibly more advanced course, but it just, this is what happened for the ovaries to grow in the first 14 days. Day 14, the secondary oocyte is kicked off. The remaining part of the follicle is going to continue. We call it corpus luteum, and this corpus luteum will continue to produce hormones. If there is no pregnancy, it will become white-colored corpus albicans, and it will be lost. This is the endometrium. So what happened here is you are at the end of the proliferative phase, and it's going to slough off, bleeding. And then you rebuild proliferative phase until ovulation occurs. What day is ovulation? Day 14, mid-cycle. Do I need to remember that? Yes. Ovulation, which is this. kick off or the release of the secondary oocyte out of this follicle. We call that ovulation. It leaves the ovaries and go to the oviduct. Ovulation is when it leaves the follicle. The rest of the follicle become corpus luteum, the yellow body, and it will secrete hormones to support the endometrium. If there is no pregnancy, there is no need for all this thickness, so this will die, shrink, and become white, corpus albicans. Albicans means white. Albicans, like albino. Albicans. Luteum means yellow. Luteum, yellow. Albicans, white. The yellow body, the white body. So here it is. It's going to disintegrate this thickness here. Look at this one. It's not changing. Look at this. The basal one is not changing at all. It doesn't go anywhere. But this one is the one that slough off. Period. Period ends. Rebuilding proliferative phase until day 14. This is estrogen. How about after day 14? The other 14 days? Yes, but now it will become more thicker and secretions. Here is how the ovaries work. Have a follicle inside which you have primary oocyte. It grow, becomes secondary oocyte. The secondary oocyte, look at it, it leaves. We call that ovulation. Day 14. Do I need to remember that? Of course. Day 14, mid-cycle. We are always assuming the cycle is 28. Is it really 28? No, this is an average, but we can't adjust it to every single lady. We're talking about anatomy and physiology now. So we are going to talk about the average. If the average is 28, this is day 14. What happened after that, after it's released? Remaining of the follicle, where is it going? We'll keep it. It has a function. It will change, become the yellow body, corpus luteum, which secretes estrogen and progesterone that goes to the endometrium to prepare. So you're preparing from two aspects. This secondary oocyte will go to the fallopian tube, waiting for a sperm to come from the other side. And assuming that there is a sperm, so you will need to build the endometrium. That's what the corpus luteum is doing, secreting hormones to build the endometrium and make the proliferative phase. And then the next phase, which is progesterone, secretory phase to make more secretions. Now, is there is pregnancy or not? If there is a sperm, there is a possible pregnancy. No pregnancy, there is no need for this corpus. Corpus means body. This yellow body, corpus luteum, will degenerate. It will lose its yellow color, become white, and this white will be lost. So here it is, putting it together. One more thing that I want you to know here is what caused this rupture of the follicle to release this secondary oocyte is something called LH, luteinizing hormone. So there are hormones that come from here, from the pituitary gland. Follicle stimulating hormone stimulate the follicle to grow, and luteinizing hormone causing this rupture. Here are the fimbriae that I talked about, which will pick up the secondary oocyte N, waiting for a sperm to come from the other side. This is the LH and FSH I was talking about, coming from the pituitary gland. I just want you to know FSH is called follicle stimulating hormone. Stimulate the follicle to grow. LH is luteinizing hormone. This is the one that caused the rupture, releasing secondary oocyte, which is ovulation. So if I ask you, what is the hormone that's responsible for ovulation at day 14? Luteinizing hormone coming from the pituitary. The other thing that's extremely important here, basics, is that when the pituitary gland release FSH and LH, It go to the ovaries, do the function, stimulating the follicles to grow. These follicles are going to release estrogen, and this estrogen will do negative feedback, extremely important. Negative feedback. It will tell the pituitary gland, slow down. We are working. You got what you need. Slow down. Stop releasing FSH and LH because you did already. The ovaries are stimulated. Follicles are growing. Ovulation occur. We have the estrogen. So stop. So releasing FSH, causing stopping. I hope you guys still remember that from the beginning. We talked about it before. So what is the cycle in the childbearing period? Prepare the uterus to support the embryo. The ovarian cycle, also known as menstrual cycle. What mark the first menstrual cycle? Does anybody know? First.
Menarche.
Go ahead.
The menarche.
Yes. Menarche. Yes, menarche. Arche or arche? Yes, arche means beginning. Okay, very good. Aging, estrogen will go down, and beginning what?
Menopause.
Menopause. Yes. So remember, arche versus pause. In females, meiosis gametes are in the process called, in females, is it oogenesis or spermatogenesis?
Oogenesis.
Yes, oogenesis. Oo is ova, generation of the ova. Spermatogenesis, see, you're using genesis again. Did you notice this? You're using genesis twice. Generation. Generation of the sperm, generation of the oo. What's the oo? Ova. Primary oocyte, remember, it will be arrested in meiosis. What? Until puberty.
1.
Yes, 1. And later, during puberty, it will go into the next one. Which hormone shift in hormones FSH or LH make the follicle grow? Hormone, the FSH. LH also work, but FSH is the one that helped it to grow, but shift in hormones. Here is what I was talking about. Mid-cycle surge of LH. Surge means sudden increase. Will trigger ovulation. What is released during ovulation, primary or secondary? Does anybody know?
It's secondary.
It's a secondary, yes. Primary is too small. It's not ready to be released yet. The one that's released is actually secondary. The cyclic release of what's the other hormone beside progesterone?
Estrogen.
Estrogen, yes. All right, very good. So here is the term that I talked about already, gonads. Remember, gonads is an umbrella. It's a generic word. That means primary reproductive organs. Gametes is another umbrella, is another generic word for sex cells. Is it gonads, primary? Is it testes or ovaries? Both of them. Gametes, is it a sperm or ova? Both of them. So you have to be specific. Now we're talking about males. In males, of course, the primary reproductive organs, which is the gonads, I keep on repeating because it's important. Gonads are the primary reproductive organs. Testes in males, ovaries in females, 2 ovaries in females, 2 testes in males. If you don't know this, you need to know that during embryo, the testes are not really in the scrotum down there. It's not in this terminal location. It's actually in the abdomen. It forms in the abdomen, like around the kidney. This is the actual location. But there is a ligament that attach to the scrotum and keep on pulling it, pulling down until it end up located into the scrotum. So what you see, if a lady here giving birth of a male newborn, or if you're the dads and you got a baby male or a male baby, you will notice that the doctors will come over, or maybe the nurse will come over, and she will actually check, see the scrotum if there is a testis inside or not. Why they are doing that? Because occasionally the testes do not go all the way to the scrotum and stay in the abdomen, and this is a very bad thing to happen, because there is a big chance that it will continue to be pulled down. So they will tell you, you know what? One of the testes is not there. It's not in the scrotum. Is this is like a dangerous or something? They will tell you, we are going to wait for a couple of months, and I want to see you again. I want to see the baby again. And next time, sometimes the ligament is still working, but just delayed. So that next time when you go, let me see both scrotum here, right and left. Oh, both of them have the testes. You're fine, and your baby's fine. But sometimes it doesn't happen, and the testis is stuck up there. It doesn't go down, and this is very dangerous because it will not work. It's too warm for the testes to stay in the abdomen. It's too warm for them. They need to go out in the scrotum. This is the reasonable temperature. If it stay up, what's going to happen? Infertility. It's not going to work. Plus, if it stayed for years and you just leave it alone, this is for your information if you're interested to know. If you leave it there for years, it can create or resulting in cancer of the testes. So that's why this is very important. They can pull it down, which is good, but if they failed, even if they remove it, better than waiting until it gets cancer, because it's too hot inside of your body. I think you all know that inside of your body is warmer than the outside. We all know this. So in the testis, this is reasonable. I'm sorry, in the scrotum. So let's see the male here. Here are the different organs in the male. And let's, as usual, start with the gonads, or the primary reproductive or sex organs, which is the testis. Of course, it should be two, and it should be located right here in the scrotum, both of them. This is where the testis is where the sperms and testosterone are formed. Sperms, when they form, they will go into this organ that's called the epididymis. It will wait for some time until it maturates. And this is the basic information that you have to know. Why males have epididymis above the testes? Why? Why don't we have like this duct and that's it? Because it's not fully mature yet. The sperms will stay some time here in the epididymis, and this is a function until they maturate. And then when they maturate, they are going to move down this duct. It goes all the way like this. What is this duct? Vas deferens or ductus deferens. So the sperm form in the testes. We'll leave the testes to go to the epididymis. We'll leave the epididymis and go to the vas deferens or ductus deferens. Both of them are the same. As long as you see deferens, it's a duct. It will take it all the way until this organ join. What is this organ? Seminal vesicle. It's coming from semen, seminal. So it produces the big part of the semen. Do you mean sperms? No. Semen is sperms and liquid, other fluids. The big part, the main bulk of this fluid come from this seminal vesicle. So sperms are moving like this until the seminal vesicle join, they will add the biggest part of the fluid to make semen. And then it's going to leave and go within this duct. We call it ejaculatory duct. Why did you call it ejaculatory duct? Because during sexual intercourse, during orgasm, ejaculation happen, and these ducts will release the semen, and it will go down like this and be ejected out, ejaculation. And that's why it's called ejaculatory duct. But it will pass through this oval shaped organ known as prostate. Obviously, all of this is not in females. Everything is different here. And it will pass through this prostate. This prostate is under the urinary bladder in males only. Of course, females do not have anything underneath the bladder. And this is one of the differences. So the sperm with the semen will go here into this. In the middle here, you have the urethra, but the prostate is going to release some more secretions. And then it will leave through this part of the urethra. And there is a third gland that's going to secrete a little bit more secretion. Now, this is the semen that will pass through this urethra until ejaculation. It's ejaculated out in the vagina, and then a good part of it, and so on. We talked about that. Sperms, part of it, are weak, not doing anything, and the stronger one will go cervix, uterus, oviduct, and so on. This organ, of course, this is the penis, and the penis is 3 erectile tissues, like 3 ducts, 3 tubes, but these are erectile, like spongy shaped. So it's small, but when the blood goes in and it doesn't leave, leading to erection, it becomes filled with blood, and we call it erection. And this will become a lot bigger and stiff at the same time. But there are 3 parts here are called erectile. 1, 2, these are called corpora cavernosa. And this one here is the one that contains the urethra, which is this one right here. Okay, so this is the pathway that you need to know. Let me do it real quick. Just remind you, both sperms and testosterone are made here in the testes. Which part of the testes we will talk about it. It's called seminiferous tubules, and you need to know it. Which part of the testes? Then what? Go to the epididymis. What's the function? Become maturated. And then what? Vas deferens or ductus deferens, going all the way until it's joined by seminal vesicle. Function, adding seminal fluid. And then it leaves through ejaculatory duct, going to this part of the urethra. It's within the prostate. We call it prostatic urethra. What happened here? The prostate is going to add another part to make the semen. And then the semen will continue. Bulbourethral gland is going to add more. Just this is the tiniest part, like 1% or something. So now it's going to leave this part and go to this part of the urethra. Look how the urethra is long here, which is completely different than females. In males, look at this urethra, it's very long. Part of it in the prostate, prostatic urethra. Part of it in the middle here, membrane of the urethra, and a long part inside the penis, penile urethra. For your information, that explains why females get more urinary tract infection, a lot more than males. Because in females, the urethra is very short and it opened like around here. So it's very short and it is very close to the other organs like vagina and the anus and so on. So it's easy for the organisms, pathogens to pass in and go inside. But look at the males, it's all the way out there. So in order to get the pathogens, of course it happened, but it is rare or less common, let's say less common. Because for the pathogen to get in here, and which is far away from the other source of organisms around it, it's hard. And in order to go all the way like this until it reaches the bladder, it will be killed. But does males get urinary tract infection? Of course, yes, but less frequently than females. This is just for your own information. So here it is again. During ejaculation, ejaculatory duct, there will be a lot of muscular contractions to finish what we talked about. The sperms, seminal vesicle adding, prostate adding, ejaculatory duct, and then it will move like the muscles push it. The bulbourethral gland add more, push with muscular contraction until it's expelled out, which is ejaculation. Now the semen itself in males, the semen itself is the number of sperms is millions, 120 to 150 million per milliliter, not even per ejaculate. It's a lot more than that in ejaculate, per milliliter only. And believe it or not, if you're talking about like 50 million, it's a lot. No, it's not a lot. This is less than normal because most of it will die. Plus secretions from the seminal vesicle, and this fluid is alkaline and contain fructose. So this is something to know about secretions from the seminal vesicle. Alkaline. Why? To neutralize the acidity that can kill the sperms. Contain fructose. Why? To nourish the sperms. It also contains something prostaglandin to the muscles to contract, pushing the semen out. How about the prostate? The prostate. Does it also secrete part of it? Yes. Also neutralize the acidity. Why are you saying acidity? Why do you want to neutralize the acidity? What acidity? Yes. Remember in males, urethra is where the urine leave. So when males urinate, the urine leave from the bladder to the urethra to the outside. Urine by itself is acidic. The acidity is bad for the sperms. Plus, the vagina of females is always acidic. Why the vagina is acidic? Is that for a reason? Yes. Yes, it is for a reason. Two reasons. Number one, which is the more important one, is to kill organisms, the bad organisms inside the vagina. So it's cleaning the area. That's why it's acidic. It's always acidic. At the same time, the weak sperms will die. But we have the seminal vesicle and the prostate to neutralize. It produces alkaline fluid in order to neutralize this acidity a little bit. So that you don't want to kill all the sperms, of course. So that's going to neutralize. And this is something important to know. The testes are called the primary reproductive organs. We call them the gonads, producing the gametes and the hormones. Why do we have the epididymis? Storage of the sperms until it maturates. During ejaculation, the sperms are going to leave, move through the oviduct, seminal vesicle add, ejaculatory duct, prostate add, moving, penile urethra, ejaculation out. The male is different than females because urethra is a common duct for both semen and urine, which is different than females, and I talked about it before. What's the semen? The semen is the sperm plus the fluids that we talked about. The process of formation of the sperms is called spermatogenesis, and we talked about that. There are specific tubules here that make the sperms that are called seminiferous tubules. So if I ask you, where do we make the sperms? In the testes. Yes, this is the easy question. But if I ask you a little bit harder question, which part? Seminiferous tubules. Look at this. Where do we make the the sperms inside the testis here. Which part of the testis? These seminiferous tubules. And it go and stay here until it matures. Sexual intercourse, ejaculation, it goes like this. Seminal vesicle adds, moving into the ejaculatory duct, passing through prostatic urethra, prostate add more, moving, membranous urethra, bulbourethral gland add more, ejaculation out. These are the seminiferous tubules. I want you to remember this name, seminiferous tubules. This is what's seminiferous. If you're interested to know, it means it looks like a nephron, like zigzag. You see how it's not straight, right? It's not straight line. No, look, zigzag, tortuous. So this is seminiferous tubules. The sperms are going to leave and go to this part, and then moving. Right here, this pouch hanging over the testes is called the epidermis. The sperms are going to stay here for some time, maturate, and if there is ejaculation happening, it leaves. Go to the vas deferens. Here are the seminiferous tubules. The only thing that I want you to know here is seminiferous tubules is where we make the sperms inside the testes. Where do we make the sperms? In the testes. Which part of the testes? Seminiferous tubules. So these are the seminiferous tubules. How about the hormones? Which part? Seminiferous tubules as well. But other cells are called Leydig cells. Here are the testes where the spermatogenesis happen. And when you do the spermatogenesis, what do you form? Something called spermatogonia. Spermatogonia. When it maturates, we call it spermatozoa. I want you to remember this. Spermatogonia is the immature one. When it maturates, becomes spermatozoa. Look, spermatogonia. This is like the baby sperm. When it maturates, it becomes spermatozoa. In spermatogenesis, you start with one spermatogonium. Gonium means immature or baby. You do mitosis first. One become two. One of them, meiosis one, you get two. Meiosis two, you get four. They become sperms, which is not the case in females. In females, meiosis one, and that's it. Until actually stop here. Prophase one. And then at puberty, becomes secondary oocyte. If you still, I'm just comparing to help you remember. It becomes secondary spermatocyte. That's it. That's it. Meiosis 2 only happen if the sperm join. I'm just highlighting the differences. The sperm structure consists of this head, this neck or mid piece, and this tail. Head, this part in the front here is called acrosome, acro. This will secrete secretions, enzymes to penetrate the wall of the secondary oocyte and enter in. This part, the blue part here, is containing the nucleus, which is the actual 23 chromosomes. This middle piece, why sperms have this middle piece? I want the M to remind you with the M. Middle piece contain mitochondria for energy, for this sperm to move. If there is no middle piece, there is no mitochondria, there is no energy. This sperm is going to die because it doesn't move, it will die. The tail is called flagellum, and this is to propel, meaning to move like this. Like, you know, the fish move its tail in order to move. Same thing, this is what happens. So each part of those has a function that I want you to know. Acrosome contain digestive enzymes to penetrate the wall of the secondary oocyte. The head contain nucleus, which is the 23 chromosomes. Middle part, mitochondria, energy for locomotion or movement. Tail, propelling, to move. The cells that produce, I mentioned seminiferous tubule is what produce sperms and hormones. Which is which? Leydig cells specifically, you need to remember this name. These are the cells in the seminiferous tubules producing testosterone. Testosterone have a lot of functions, I talked about it, including maturation of the organs, secondary sexual characteristics, and I talked about that before. Imagine what happened to the child, male. They start to have the hair in different parts in their face, in the armpit, around the genitalia. The muscles become bigger, the bone become bigger, the shoulder become wider, the waist become narrower, and the voice, you can even tell, are you in puberty now? How did you know? Your shape, you started to have some hair here in the face, your voice become deeper and harsher. All of this is because of testosterone. Even behavior, the more aggressive behavior, the tendency or the attraction toward the other sex, it happened from testosterone affecting the sexual behavior. The two hormones that I already talked about that come from the pituitary gland are FSH and LH. I talked about it in females. And remember those FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, stimulate the follicle in females, luteinizing hormone in females, ovulation. In males, it's different. LH, this is what stimulates the Leydig cells to produce testosterone, while FSH stimulate the production of sperms. Same process, negative feedback happen here same as we talked about in females. Same thing. Hypothalamus produce hormones that go to the pituitary, and then to pituitary release LH and FSH. LH, Leydig cells produce testosterone, and FSH go to the Sertoli cells, producing or stimulating spermatogenesis. Where is the negative feedback here? Testosterone. When we produce testosterone, it will go to the hypothalamus to stop producing, and even LH will stop producing those two hormones. Germ cells and seminiferous tubules produce sperms. What do you call the process? Spermatogenesis. What about females? Oogenesis. Oo versus spermato. Add to it genesis. Genesis is generation. What are the hormones that guide the sperm formation? Testosterone is one, and the other two hormones from the pituitary gland, LH and FSH. Secondary sexual characteristics or secondary sex characteristics. Testosterone in males. How about females? Estrogen. What is the process that control this formation of these hormones? Negative feedback, repeating. Last thing here is when sexual intercourse occurs, the penis goes into the vagina, ejaculation, semen goes into the vagina, millions of sperms. Some of them are strong enough energy, enough maturation that they will start to move, go to the cervix, go to the uterus, leave the uterus and go to the oviduct. And if there is a secondary oocyte coming its way, sperms catch it, a lot of those are going to try to penetrate. But what actually happened is only one of them will penetrate first by releasing these digestive hormones, penetrating in this tough zone here, and enter in All of it? No, not all of it. Just a nucleus goes in with the 23 chromosomes. And believe it or not, after that happened, this wall here become harder. So all of these sperms are gone. They cannot enter in. They cannot go. Like it goes in and close the door. Because of course you don't want like 100 sperm to go in. This will lead to 100 fertilized egg or I mean 100 twins or something. We don't want that to happen. Only one goes in, and if this one goes in, once it enter in, it will make the wall harder. So other sperms will never be able to get in. Just for your information, if you are interested to know. Sometimes when this one is entering, another one goes in. This will lead to twins, the identical twins. This is rare. So here is the fertilization, ovulation, secondary oocyte is released from the follicle, and it goes in, picked up by the fimbriae, infundibulum, fallopian tube, moving. A sperm coming from the other side, fertilization occur in this oviduct or fallopian tube. What are the chances? Well, you need to know that the eggs stay up to 24 hours. While this is for the secondary oocyte, I mean, secondary oocytes stay for 18 to 24 hours. Let's say up to one full day, 124 hours. One full day, I mean, 24 hours. So this is the time that takes to move here. If you catch it within those 24 hours, if the sperm catch it here, fertilization will occur. What if it doesn't come at this time? Yes, the sperm, when it goes in here, it can stay for 3 to 5 days. So even if the ova came after that, still fertilization can occur. So I want you to remember 24 hours. This is the eggs or the ova or the secondary oocyte specifically stay for about 24 hours, while the sperm stay for 3 to 5 days. The chances are good here, but if this couple are trying to conceive, are trying to get a baby, they need to make the math. They need to like, when did you get the last cycle? It was, let's say, February 5th. Okay, February 5th. This is where you started. I'm going to count 14 days. So let's try around the day 19th. Okay, so around that time, there is a big chance for fertilization, if fertilization or if conception is actually needed. And that's it. The rest of the summary, and as usual, this is repeating what we already talked about it, but it's more of summarizing it. So I'm going to stop here. Stop